North Korean leader Kim Jong-un must be mad. The Pyongyang leader announced that he would send his troops into Ukraine for Russia. This was recently officially documented by South Korean intelligence. Yes, you have not heard wrong. Thousands of North Korean soldiers are now in Russian camps to fight in Ukraine, as images, reports, and analyses published by South Korea reveal. By doing so, Kim Jong claims that he is engaged in a war against Ukraine. North Korea even published a poster calling on Ukraine to surrender. The surrender letter requires the Ukrainian army to surrender to the Great Korean People's Army and not engage in unnecessary resistance, it said. But there is one thing Kim Jong missed. North Korea is pitting its troops against the Ukrainian army, which is equipped with incredible combat skills. Considering the geographical differences between Ukraine and North Korea and their combat skills, the question arises, will the North Korean army be able to effectively resist the Ukrainian attack, or will we witness the desertion or complete neutralization of these soldiers, as happened with the Buryat Battalion? In this video, we explain how the Ukrainian army can easily eliminate North Korean troops on the battlefield. Now, let's discover all the details of this risk that North Korea is taking for Russia, inviting a global crisis. Before we start, help us by liking this video and sharing our content. Recently, a few of our videos have been facing a lot of recommendation problems due to YouTube's algorithm errors. Also, while we are working against disinformation and trying to bring you the most accurate information, Russian bots are targeting and attacking our channel and forcing the YouTube algorithm to make mistakes. Therefore, your support, likes, and shares help us a lot with the algorithm. So let's get started. As we mentioned, the Pyongyang government has signaled in recent days that it would send troops to Russia if necessary. Now, this message has been officially documented by the Seoul government's intelligence teams. South Korea's National Intelligence Service said that it observed North Korea shifting its special forces to eastern Russia, and that this was the beginning of Pyongyang's military intervention in the Ukraine war. Following these historic revelations, South Korea's spy agency reported that North Korea has sent around 1,500 Special Forces soldiers to Russia for combat training ahead of the expected war deployment to Ukraine. South Korea's National Intelligence Service found that Pyongyang transported North Korean Special Forces to the Russian region from October 8th to 13 via Russian naval transport ship and confirmed the entry of the North Korean military with satellite photos. According to the National Intelligence Service, 4 landing ships and 3 frigates of the Russian Pacific Fleet completed the first transfer of about 1,500 North Korean Special Forces from areas near Chongjin, Hamhyung, and Musudan to Vladivostok, Russia. This is the first time since 1990 that a Russian naval fleet has entered North Korean waters. A second transfer during the same period was planned to take place in the near future. Large transport aircraft, such as the Russian Air Force's AN-124, frequently travel between Vladivostok and Pyongyang. It is likely that North Korea's second shipment to Russia may have been made by these means. The North Korean soldiers from the first shipment are said to have gone through certain stages to enter the war on behalf of Russia. They are currently stationed in Russian military units in Vladivostok, Ussurisk, Khabarovsk, and Blagoveshchensk in the Far East, and are expected to be deployed to the front line as soon as possible. These North Korean soldiers, who will fight on behalf of Russia, have completed their adaptation training. North Korean soldiers have been issued Russian military uniforms and Russian-made weapons, and have also been issued fake ID cards for those living in the Yakutia and Buryatia regions of Siberia who look like North Koreans. These methods suggested that North Korean soldiers were disguising themselves as Russian troops to hide the fact that they were deployed to the battlefield. In other words, these secret troop deployment plans between Russia and North Korea were elaborately embellished and prepared. But can the North Korean army effectively resist the Ukrainian attack, or will we again witness the desertion of these soldiers, as happened with the Buryat Battalion? North Korea's military equipment, structure, and tactics are all inherited from the former Soviet Union, and its current fighting arrangements are a translation of Soviet arrangements. The North Korean army is known for its brave fighting style and is determined not to retreat and has a strong will to fight, but with the exception of North Korean soldiers who desert. According to the U.S. assessment, North Korea's combat characteristics are to concentrate tanks and artillery firepower for frontal attacks and to use strong flanking forces for pincer attacks. The training period of North Korean soldiers is at least 5 years, much longer than the 2-month training period of Ukrainian mobilized Russian soldiers, demonstrating the advantages of North Korean combat engineers in technical and tactical skills, shooting, enemy front movement, and rocket warfare. But the battlefield environment in Ukraine is very different from that in North Korea. The vast plains make covert operations difficult. In addition, due to the peculiarities of modern warfare, infantry and engineers are mainly threatened by frontline drones, and the use of a large number of drones is an important feature of the battlefield. In a sudden Russian-Ukrainian war, both sides deployed hundreds of drones to compete for air superiority, and 90% of the Russian army's losses in many battles were caused by Ukrainian drones. Therefore, in the face of the Ukrainian military's threat of drone bombing, reconnaissance, and drone penetration, North Korean engineers must have not only the physical strength to build fortifications, but also the ability to avoid drone reconnaissance and attacks, electronic warfare interference and anti-electronic interference, and anti-drone air defense operations. When North Korean engineers build fortifications in the rear, they will face the threat of tactical missiles, HIMARS rockets, and drone attacks. At this time, concealment, air defense, evacuation, and trail covering capabilities will be largely tested. To reduce the damage caused by drones, they need to use tactics such as maneuver evasion and electromagnetic silencing to prevent drone detection and attack, as well as electronic jamming, camouflage and concealment, creating false targets and other means to fight against drones. So the Russian plan to send North Korean soldiers and engineering teams to Ukraine is likely to be suicidal in the long run. It would not be surprising if the North Korean soldiers who escape with their lives flee the front lines again. Thus, it seems unlikely that these soldiers will return from Ukraine victorious and alive. That is, experienced Ukrainian troops, equipped with incredible combat skills, will bury them in the dust of history. The confirmation by South Korea that North Korean forces are fighting in Ukraine is the first major involvement of that country in a war engulfing Eastern Europe since the Korean War in the 1950s. As this caused a global crisis, the focus turned to the West. The West was expected to react to North Korea's move. Western officials did not provide separate assessments that matched South Korean intelligence. Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder said he had seen reports of North Korean forces being deployed to the war, but could not confirm or verify them. And how did Russia react to this? Moscow has rejected claims that Pyongyang troops are fighting on behalf of the country. This comes after North Korea and Russia strengthened their defense ties during the Ukraine war, and the two countries signed an agreement in June pledging military assistance if either was attacked, which undermines confidence in Moscow's words. Moscow's reaction is therefore quite normal. The Putin administration has tried to deny it, but so far a lot of evidence has been shared with the press. As you may recall, in early August, the National Intelligence Service revealed that Kim Jong-sik, the first deputy director of the Ministry of Military Industry, which is at the center of North Korea's missile development, visited North Korea's KN-23 missile launch site. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Kim Jong-sik, together with dozens of North Korean officers, has several times approached the Russian-Ukrainian front line and provided on-the-spot guidance. On the other hand, some of the North Korean soldiers had joined the front lines of the Ukrainian-occupied town of Sudzha in the Kursk region as part of the Special Buryat Battalion organized in the 11th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces. There were also reports that 18 North Korean personnel from Russia's Buryat Battalion had fled their positions on the border of Bryansk and Kursk oblasts. There were numerous indications that North Korea was sending not only troops, but also large quantities of military ammunition to Russia. Ukraine's National Intelligence Service assessed that North Korea has supplied more than 13,000 containers of lethal weapons, including artillery shells, missiles, and anti-tank rockets, to Russia on a total of 70 occasions since August, as a result of the Ukrainian General Agency for Defense Intelligence's check of North Korean-made weapons collected from the battlefield. The weapons supplied by North Korea to Russia included 122mm and 152mm artillery shells, Phoenix 4 anti-tank missiles, and short tankers. Taking into account the size of the containers transported by cargo ships between North Korea and Russia, it is estimated that over 8 million shells, including 122mm and 152mm artillery shells, have been supplied to Russia so far. In recent days, the emergence of images of a Russian ship loaded with North Korean weapons leaving the port of Rajan has been one of the most concrete elements proving the arms transfer between the two countries. In addition, the images of the wreckage of the North Korean KN-23, which was recently captured by the Ukrainian army, is another evidence that increases these possibilities. A North Korean multiple rocket launcher and a 9M113 anti-tank missile were some of the military munitions captured by the Ukrainians on the battlefield. The Ukrainian government announced that the KN-23 short-range ballistic missiles supplied by North Korea to Russia had been used in attacks on major cities, including the Ukrainian capital Kyiv, with significant civilian casualties. However, Ukrainian intelligence officials have analyzed that many North Korean-made weapons have a high defect rate and low accuracy, so they are used for mass attacks to protect the front line rather than precision strikes. Even if the military munitions North Korea has sent to Russia are ineffective, this does not diminish the possibility of triggering a global clash. North Korea's crazy moves, such as sending military munitions and troops to Russia, could trigger a global crisis, which is one of South Korea's main agenda items at the moment. In response to Pyongyang's move, Seoul has said that it will equip Ukraine with military ammunition and that there will be no limit to military aid. But can South Korea really provide as much military aid to Ukraine as it has announced? South Korea has joined the efforts of the European Union member states and the United States, which have so far coordinated and adopted several comprehensive sanctions packages. Since the Seoul government is prohibited by the Foreign Trade Act from exporting arms except for peaceful purposes, it has instead directed its assistance to Ukraine by providing financial, humanitarian, technical, and non-lethal military supplies, including bulletproof vests, helmets, medical supplies. Ukraine also received donations from South Korea of 2 K600 combat engineering vehicles for demining 100 Sangyong Muso pickup trucks and 5 Doosan DX-17Z mini excavators. On the other hand, the South Korean parliament increased the previous Ukrainian aid package for 2024 by 8 times, covering reconstruction, humanitarian aid, and aid distributed through other international organizations, and it amounted to 520 billion won, or $394 million. The South Korean president also pledged to cooperate with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in post-war reconstruction efforts, establish a scholarship fund named after him, and provide more support to Ukrainian students living in South Korea. In addition to all this assistance, the Seoul government has also joined sanctions against Russia in an effort to corner Putin and prevent the threat of war from spreading further. Since South Korea is a key U.S. ally and a global partner of NATO, it joined the economic sanctions against Moscow and coordinated the supply of aid with the United States, transferring 550,000 155mm artillery shells directly to the United States over 2 years to replace the ammunition the United States was sending to Ukraine. Thanks to this transfer of shells, South Korea's contribution to supplying artillery ammunition to Ukraine was larger than that of all European countries combined. On the other hand, South Korea allowed the export of weapons components to Ukraine, and the Defense Acquisition Program Administration approved export licenses for Poland to supply Ukraine with Crab howitzers made from South Korean components. These decisions not only reinforced NATO and U.S. expectations that South Korea would provide more assistance to Ukraine, but also positioned South Korea as a major player in military procurement and a defender of international order. South Korea's decisive policies and its stance against the Russianization of North Korean troops and ammunition are a great hope for Ukraine. But North Korea is also launching unthinkable attacks in order to suppress Seoul's bold steps. Most recently, South Korean authorities announced that North Korea had blown up parts of two main roads connecting the southern part of the peninsula. According to a statement from Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff, explosives were used to destroy parts of the Gyeongui Line on the west coast and the Donghae Line on the east coast, two important road and rail links connecting the north and south. In practical terms, the destruction of travel routes makes little difference. The two Koreas are divided by one of the world's most heavily fortified borders, and the roads have not been used for years. But the symbolism of this attack comes at a time of particularly heated rhetoric between the two Korean leaders. Video shared by South Korea's defense ministry showed several explosions on roads on the north side of the military demarcation line separating the two Koreas. According to the video, heavy machinery, including trucks and excavators, were deployed on at least one of the roads, which was then partially blocked by a black barrier. Ministry officials said the North was carrying out additional work with heavy machinery at the scene, but gave no further details. The South Korean military opened fire in the area south of the military demarcation line in response to the explosions and is closely monitoring the North Korean military's movements, officials said, adding that they are maintaining a full readiness posture in cooperation with the United States. The explosions came just days after North Korea accused South Korea of flying drones filled with propaganda over its capital, Pyongyang, and threatened retaliation after Pyongyang sent balloons filled with garbage to the south for months. Last week, the North Korean military warned that it would take a significant military step to completely cut off territory from South Korea, after Pyongyang leader Kim Jong-un reversed his long-standing policy of peaceful unification with the South earlier this year. This warning was probably prompted by the recent attacks in South Korea. Of course, it has been suggested that South Korea will not remain unresponsive to these repressive policies of North Korea. South Korean officials said that it was ready to respond to North Korea's recent attacks and warned that if the safety of its citizens was threatened, it would mean the end of the Pyongyang regime. Following these statements, North Korea released blurry images purportedly of drones flying in the sky, as well as photos purportedly showing leaflets. Local sources claim that the drones were flown by activists who sent the same materials to the north via balloons. Park Sang-hak, leader of the Coalition for a Free North Korea movement, rejects North Korea's claim of a drone strike. Analysts said the drone incident shows that North Korea is trying to strengthen its domestic support by giving the impression that threats to the country are increasing. In fact, everything was planned well in advance. North Korea first tried to create evidence to suggest that South Korea had acted. Then Pyongyang put its troops at Putin's disposal, in a move that shifted the balance of the war between Russia and Ukraine in Eastern Europe. But all this made the Pyongyang regime a NATO target. Now that South Korea, acting in cooperation with NATO, has uncovered the plans of the Kim Jong-un regime, it seems that all dynamics will be reshaped. From now on, the question is how other NATO members, especially the US, will react to this step by North Korea. Of course, it is also important how South Korea will react to this situation. If Seoul equips Ukraine with military equipment, as it has promised to do, this may attract more attention from Pyongyang, and Kim Jong may make more sensational moves in Ukraine. But recent statements from the Seoul government suggest that South Korea doesn't really care what Kim Jong thinks. In short, all the balances and mechanics in the global arena have suddenly been shattered. For the first time in a long time, the bipolar alliance has completed its process of disintegration. North Korea is in this bipolar alliance with Russia and China, and Ukraine is in this alliance with NATO's help. Striking situations are expected to unfold between the two alliances in the future. The world order may be reshaped according to the attitude of these two alliances. Thank you for watching us.